So in this video, we are looking at how do we hear the inner voice. Is there actually something that you and I can do in order to make that happen? Is there a certain thing that we have to do? Can we create something that makes it more conducive? Or do we naturally hear the inner guidance and the inner voice? And of course, the other question is we need to understand, and we really need to know, what does it sound like? Can we tell the difference between our conscious mind and the difference between that inner voice? So let's take a look at that now. So how do we hear the inner voice? Actually, we do it unconsciously. And this is really interesting. Then we become conscious of how we're doing it. And there is an actual, very powerful way in which we can hear that inner voice. So let's go back to what we just talked about in terms of, well, we're doing it and we're not conscious of it. And this is all to do with frequency. So frequency brain activity, and we kind of beginning to realize and understand now that we are in certain parts of the brain and frequencies when we go to sleep at night and when we wake up. We know this to be beta, alpha, theta and delta. And what's really interesting about these frequencies or these activity of where we sit in our brain is that we do this without us even realizing. Now, what I mean by that is really if we sort of understand what does beta look like, because we need that in our everyday work when we go to the stores or we're doing something where we just need our full attention. We naturally go into that beta. So it's a very waking state and it's quite active. Then we've got what's called alpha. Now, alpha is really interesting because you and I can get to there without us even realizing we're in it, because that's a dreamlike state. It's a state where we're sort of not worried, we're not too aware of our mind and thoughts, what's going on, but we're kind of present and we're sort of in the moment. Now, what are some of the things that we do that we don't even realize that we're in that frequency? Well, it's when we go for a lovely walk in nature. We see the trees, we're walking by the river. I mean, it's beautiful. You might actually be aware that things shift for you. I know that I am, and it took me a little while to realize this is the same as something else, which we'll come to. But it's a very peaceful, very relaxing state and frequency to be in. So it's kind of daydreamy. It's actually very similar to the hypnosis. So we just become very present, very relaxed. Now, some of the things that put us in that, like we said, if we're in nature. Now, some of you out there might actually just know, yeah, I feel the difference when I go for that walk, when I go for that lovely long walk or that trek through nature, or I walk the dog, or I just sit out and have a coffee in the garden. That's something I do regular. And I realise and I appreciate and I become quite conscious that I'm sort of just floating and connecting in. And you probably might be aware of that yourself. Now, we also go into that frequency of alpha before we go to sleep at night. We also go into theta. Now, theta is when we're sort of going deeper. We're sort of not really aware of the sounds in the room, and we might just be thinking and our thoughts are just sort of like effortless and they're just flowing. And then before we realize it, we are not aware of anything around us, then we slip into delta. Now, delta is unconsciousness, but we are still alive in the body. It's just that we are now in the astral. So in other words, the physical body needs to sleep, but the soul, the higher self, that part of us astral travels and leaves the body. And this is where we have our dreams. So these are frequencies that are happening every time we go to sleep and every time we wake up. So this is really an interesting fact about us, but how often are you and I aware that we're in that alpha state when we're enjoying something? It might be a pet, it might be with our family, it's just that moment where you feel just really peaceful, just really relaxed. Now, another way in which we can put ourselves into that frequency is actually through meditation. Now, I know that for some this is a real issue, and I teach weekly, and I have the online Reiki level 1 and 2 program where I come across this a lot. They can't meditate. Now, if that is something that you're still kind of working with, or you're having a little bit of resistance with, I will drop a link below, which is a podcast I did where it's basically can't meditate, try this. And the reason why that's so helpful, because I really go into this a lot more about what is it that we mean when we can't meditate. So you might want to have a little look of that. So meditation is a way in which we put ourselves into alpha. And of course, then we can fluctuate and pretty much between the two of them. So meditation is the most amazing way that we can get into this frequency. It just means that we could be in beta, we can be just busy day living, and then we choose then to put that little bit of time aside, and then we can go into that frequency. So the reason why meditation is so powerful, it's because we can put ourselves into that frequency. And I'm going to add in here, the reason why the Usui Reiki way is so incredibly powerful is because we then use the power of our mind, thought, and intention to connect into what we are, which is energy, to connect with the source, universal energy, creator source. And when we do this, something magical happens. It unlocks and unleashes that ability to really focus in and get into that meditative state. So something happens when we get into that meditative state. And like we've said, we can do this naturally, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. Could be an activity that we do, a hobby that we do, going out in nature. It could be walking a dog, just with a family pet, and we're just feeling really relaxed. It is the same frequency of when we go into our meditative state. So in this meditative state, something really happens. We shift. Now it's a shift that once we get on our spiritual path, and the more we do this meditation, the more we begin to, if you like, just recognize it, because it's there. It's just like the beating heart. You know, sometimes we're not aware that it's just doing its thing all the time. And then we become aware of that heartbeat. And it's just the same as being aware of that frequency. And when we're in this frequency, we can hear the inner guidance. And that brings us on to our next part of the question. How do we hear the inner guidance? What does it look like? Hearing the inner guidance is something that I've come to appreciate with for the last years. Since 2017, I've entered the world of teaching the Usui Reiki, and it's been incredible because we all do the hearing, if you like, very differently. For some of us, we feel it. We feel that inner voice and the inner guidance, that intuition. Some are very visual, mind's eye. They get pictures, symbols, and they're able to sort of put it all together. Some literally do hear that guidance, that whisper of the inner voice. And then you've got those that are very cognizant. They just know it. You don't read it. Nobody tells you. You just have almost like this profound wisdom, this inner knowledge. And that's intuitively perceived. So how we get into that meditative state, and also how we hear the inner voice, is very different. We're all wired differently, but essentially it's all the same. So it's the claircognizance, the knowing, clairvoyancy, the seeing, the clairsentient, the feeling, the clairaudience, which is the hearing. And you might be a person as well that kind of can tune in and hear spirit, smell, taste. And this is what makes up this intuitive, if you like, energetic part of us, where we begin to perceive things that's not necessarily right here. It's like beyond. Now that may resonate with you and make sense, that we could be walking, for example, with a dog, and we're with our dog and we're walking, and then something just hits. We know something. It might be something we're going through. We just know. And what that intuitive knowing does helps us in whatever aspect that we're going through. You might feel that information. If you're like me, that's how I've always perceived the world, and I thought something was wrong with me. All through my childhood, my teens and my 20s, I've always been very sensitive to things around me. In fact, it almost made me withdraw from that, until I realised this is a really powerful gift. We're all gifted. It's all within us, but sometimes it's translating it, what it looks like in our everyday lives. So how to hear the inner voice is going to be a way in which you already intuitively and perceive the world around you. That doesn't change. And something else which I've noticed, and this comes up quite a bit when we're in the Reiki courses, and that is that we seem to think that the meditative state of doing a hobby we like, just stroking our cat, just whatever it is that gets you into that relaxed right here and right now frequency, we think meditation has to be an out-of-body experience. And yes, they can be incredible. But for the majority, and for the most of the time, these shifts are really subtle. And they have an inner knowing and an inner frequency, and it opens us to so much more than what's going on around us. In fact, Yusui said that once we get into this frequency state, we begin to really remember who we are. Then we begin to really hear the inner voice as to why we're even here, why we're going through certain challenges, why they're on repeat. And we begin to perceive things really beyond what is around us. There's a lot of truth in the fact that this information, or the knowledge and the wisdom, is within us. We just need to find that way to hear it. So what does that mean for you and I then? Well, we need to find that thing that makes us in that frequency state. For some, just going to bed at night, doing a meditation might be the best, the more opportune time for you to go into that frequency. For some, it's the morning. For some, it is out on nature. They go on walks, they do challenge, they run, joggers. You get into that rhythm, you get into that flow, the internal part. And it's really incredible. So how do we hear the inner voice? Well, we need to do whatever it is that gets us into there. But the most beautiful way, and a way that we can teach ourselves to get into this frequency and to hear that higher self, is with meditation. So like I said, if that's a little bit of something that's a bit of hit and miss with you, you might want to have a look at that link below. You might want to just find a little bit more of what the difference between meditation and Reiki. And there is just a little difference there. And it's all to do with how we get into that frequency. And it's incredible. I've had so many people over the years say to me, I can't meditate. And I know I'm here to do something. I can't tap into it. And then when they do this method, do this frequency, and it's been left for you and I so that we can actually get there. And the beautiful, wonderful realization, when we tune into that frequency state, the way that we're naturally already wired and put together, and then something happens, it just goes boom, and that's beautiful. So once we get into that, then we can hear that incredible part of us that's already connected to Source. It has wisdom and knowledge, and it's timeless. And that part of us never lets us down. It knows why we're here. And that's when we can really start moving through our path and in life, and then really enjoying our spiritual journey and making changes in our lives. And these changes are from the inside out. They're not from the outside in. It just doesn't work that way. We're here to help each other out, but we're here also to really tap in to our power, our inner guidance, and to hear the inner voice. So I really hope that's helped you. And if anything I've said, you'd like to go and have a look at the website, then please do. And that's at learnreikiandconnect.co.uk. And in there, just have a look and sort of see the way that not only I've helped others, but I have done it myself. I'm on the journey too, we all are. And if we can help each other out and just how we move forward, that's really great. So I look forward to speaking with you another time. So bye for now.